All right, on today's interview, we have Steve Everett, born in Albany, Georgia, raised in Greensboro, North Carolina. Steve's been featured on a couple NASCAR Heat games, starting with NASCAR Heat 2 with his song Chemical Weapon, and has had an assortment of songs in the games ever since then. So I want to go ahead and play y'all a quick snippet of a song that's going to be featured in NASCAR Heat 5. So I hope you guys enjoy that.
I could never love you, but I'm sure I'd like to try. Lost causes turn me on and cut me like a knife. You say you're broken and I just might be the cure. Well, I'd love to fix you up and leave you wanting more. Leave you wanting more. We could last the weekend.
All right, Steve. Well, I want to go ahead and hear some more about you. Let our listeners hear more about what makes Steve Everett Steve Everett. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your upcomings in music?
Man, well, I just want to say thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. I've been going on walks every day during this quarantine, the whole deal, and I've listened to some of the episodes, and you guys are. Uh, I can tell you guys have known each other for a while, and you're all tight. So this is cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, man, I'm new to the NASCAR world. Basically, just having some songs on these NASCAR Heat games has kind of introduced me to a lot of folks who maybe I wouldn't have found otherwise. And I got to tell you, man, I have like a friendly little corner of the internet, and everybody from the NASCAR scene has been so sweet and positive. You know, you always hear about terrible stuff on the internet, but I mean, if you look at my YouTube videos, it's just a bunch of people being like, "Hey, congratulations, wish you luck in the future," and you're like, "Man, this is so different."
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Well,
just good folks.
go ahead with my question regarding NASCAR Heat. So, first song was Chemical Weapon on NASCAR Heat 2. What was the process of getting your song on the game? Did they reach out to you and say they wanted your song on there? Was there something from your record label, or what was the process of getting your songs on Heat 2, Heat 4, and Heat 5?
Yeah, I'm 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 honored to be back for a third game with two songs. Honestly, this is getting to be a pattern that I love. But yeah, man, I just growing up in North Carolina, I went to Appalachian State for college, and just have a lot of friends in the Charlotte area, and some folks that I graduated with that went on to work for NASCAR, and so I've just kind of always been around. Um, and so that company, 704 Games out of Charlotte, is the one who has been making the NASCAR Heat games through EA Sports and now Sony. And basically, just I knew some folks over there, and they knew about me. And so when it came time for them to choose the music, my name was included, and they asked me for some songs. And so I kind of sent them some stuff that I thought would fit the turning left for a long time, and they luckily they went for it, man.
Well, that's awesome. We had some other questions from Jay and Josh. So whichever one of you guys want to go first and pick his brain for a bit.
I can go first since we're on the topic of introducing. So, music usually runs in families. I'm interested, like, to see, did your family get you into music? How did you get started and have this such strong passion for music?
Yeah, my dad was born and raised in North Carolina, and you know ended up not even having like indoor plumbing and electricity till he was 16. And from that upbringing, decided to be a professional opera singer. So like in the 70s, he was singing in New York and on the West Coast, and he definitely just knew that's what he had to do, and found a way to get there from pretty poor, humble beginnings. And so I don't know, when I came along, like he kind of wound up finding a happy medium, and was a church choir director at about a million different denominations. And so we just kind of had that upbringing. So I was just always around music. My mom can play piano, my brother can sing and play a little bit. And yeah, you're definitely right, it just kind of runs in the family.
One thing I wanted to go back and talk about when going back to Chemical Weapon, that was the first time I'd been introduced to your music, and Henry would mention it before that. You know, we love listening to it anytime we're driving together, and blaring it on the speakers when you're driving places, almost being obnoxious with it. But that's one of, I mean, when I think of you and your music, that's the first song I think of. And I don't know if you have favorite songs that you've created, but what if you care to just quickly, I guess, delve into the meaning behind that song and what, I guess, what inspired that song, and if you chose that one for for NASCAR Heat, or if 704 Games chose that song for NASCAR Heat.
Yeah, I selected that one and one other one from my first record to send over to them. So I guess I gave them a couple of options and they wound up choosing that one. But both of the ones I sent kind of had like an angrier edge. A lot of my stuff is I try to just kind of offer people a lift. I'd love for when people listen to my records for it to just kind of make you forget about other stuff and maybe you just tap your toes and kind of get some free good vibes out of it. That's kind of what I've always shot for. And but over the course, there's been a few songs that have a little angrier tone to them, and so this is one of those for sure. I wrote it about just somebody who I had invested so much into as a friend, and you're robbing from yourself to give to your friend, and then you find out at some point they've also been stealing from you while you've been doing that. And so it's kind of a friend breakup song, and yeah, that songs like that. As soon as you write them, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna end up singing this one for pretty much every show, just because it's anytime you write la 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 or na 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 in a song, you're like, yeah, this is gonna stick around for a while because people just kind of gravitate towards that stuff like that, stuff that's easy to remember.
Oh, I can
Yeah,
imagine. Um,
certainly catchy.
kind of
Thanks.
kind of as a follow up to that, since you've been featured by 704 Games and a bunch of their different releases, and including this upcoming release, how have they kind of increased your success as well as your um, what's the right word I'm looking for? Just kind
Yeah,
of, you know what I mean,
definitely kind of elevated the profile a little bit.
right?
Yeah. Um, Well, I think the reason 704 chooses um, independent musicians just because you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for the rights to like a Black Crowes song or like a Rolling Stones song. All of a sudden
Mhm.
you can keep the budget way lower, and then everybody kind of wins. And for the independent artists like me, those songs are getting thousands of streams per year that they wouldn't normally get. And so it's an obvious, if you just kind of look through my catalog, and you can just see the play counts and realize the ones that are on the Heat games have just kind of found an audience that the other ones haven't quite yet. But it has led to people reaching out and digging through my back catalog. And it's interesting what you said about Chemical Weapon being what you associate with me, because it's funny how that's just kind of how it is. Like if a train starts in Los Angeles and ends up in New York, um, you know, your favorite part of the journey can only be while you were on the train. So if you get on in Chicago, you're always going to remember the leg from Chicago to New York. And that's kind of how it is with bands. You get in when you get in, and if you got in with Red Hot Chili Peppers early on, you probably don't like what they're doing now. But if you got in 10 years ago, you're probably like, this is my favorite band.
Yeah, totally. And I guess as another follow up to that, um, for people who aren't super familiar with your music, if there was one song who people didn't know your music that you wanted them to listen to, one that you want to be known more, what would that be?
Oh man. However I answer this, I'll lay up sleepless tonight thinking, about whether it was right or not. Uh, that's a good question, man. The fresh cookies always taste the best. So like stuff that I've written uh, really recently is stuff that I'm really proud of, just because it kind of represents all the tools that you've been able to develop. It's kind of the best you can do at this current moment. But yeah, looking back, I would say LMNOP is just this very innocent kind of pure love song, kind of a throwback to growing up in the '90s. And I think that's probably the most accurate to who I am as a dude. Just kind of, I don't want any trouble with anybody. I just kind of want to give everybody a hug with my guitar, basically.
It sounds like a comfortable hug. All right, Steve. So, being a big music guy, I love music as well. Who would you say are some of your Like, who do you look up to in the music world, or kind of want to model your music and sound after? Like, what are some of the bands you associate your sound with?
Yeah, man, my favorite band in growing up was Sister Hazel, and they had that big old hit, "All for You" in the '90s, and I just love that sound. And there was some other stuff going on in the '90s that just had a lot of B3 organ in the background, and the vocals were up front and center. There was cool harmony, and there were still guitar solos, and there was just fun energy and really quirky songs. I felt like a lot of our rock stars in the '90s didn't take themselves very seriously, and I really that just kind of appealed to me. It was less about an individual and more about like what they believed in, or what the band stood for and stuff. And I just thought that was cool. So I dug in with them, but I also have always loved Tom Petty a ton. And,
Yeah.
I think Keith Urban is like a slightly countryer version of what I do. And I've always really gravitated towards his stuff just because it's so fun. And he kind of has that carefree, crack a beer, take your outer layer off, whatever that means.
Now, what would you say is your favorite concert that you've ever been to, excluding yourself, because I'm sure your concerts are unreal.
Oh man, was that a euphemism? I'm kidding. Man, the best show I've ever seen, hands down, was Need to Breathe at this little tiny place called the Loft in Atlanta, Georgia. And are you guys familiar with Need to Breathe?
I
Yeah.
am.
A little bit.
Yeah, South Carolina-based band, and their live show is incredible, and it's just rock and roll, but they're all like just good Southern boys that are very have good heads on their shoulders, and they kind of want to spread love around just like I do. And but I saw them. It was right before they kind of blew up in Atlanta, and it was you could just tell. I don't know. It was so weird to be a part of something, not knowing that much about the band, but I could just tell like, oh, these guys are like, this is their moment. They're about to do big things, and I get to kind of be here the night it all comes together. I don't know. I could just tell, and then very soon afterwards, they were doing big things. So it's cool how undeniable stuff like that can be.
Yeah, back to a NASCAR point of view. We got a race. Speaking of Atlanta, that's at Atlanta Motor Speedway this upcoming weekend. Do you just want to throw out a quick race prediction of who you think might win?
I think I think Kurt Busch and Kyle Busch are going to switch cars. Is what I think is going to happen.
It's a good pick right there. And for the listeners, I know coronavirus has kind of got all live music put on pause right now, but do you have anything planned for later in the year? Any tour? I mean, a tour coming up, or any shows that you guys have already scheduled?
Man, I'm kind of at this point, I'm basically just not making plans. I'm just trying to roll with the punches, and I've been going on a lot of walks and doing a lot of deep thinking, which is, as a songwriter, I can technically write that off as work. So I'm just kind of waiting to see, when everything opens back up, because I'm definitely chomping at the bit for people to, listen to me sing songs. We forget how much we need that as performers till it's gone, and then you're just, you feel a little bit weird, and all of a sudden, your family's tired of having to give you compliments, and they're wishing that they could tag out.
Well, if you're ever going to be in the Birmingham area, that's where I'm based. I go to school down in Birmingham. But if you're ever in the area, I will be front row screaming for you. Uh, Looking forward to someday, whenever all this mess is over, getting to see you play in person. But real quick, did you want go ahead and plug your music, your Spotify and Twitter and all that stuff, so our followers can give you a follow on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'll just also say through through some circumstance, I ended up being the vice president of a children's cancer charity out of Tallahassee, Florida. And we do music events every year. And our flagship event is down in St. George Island, Florida, every Mother's Day weekend. So we're a volunteer board. All the money we raise goes straight to the pediatric cancer research that we fund. And it's just a really great organization called Rock by the Sea. And you can find out more at rockbythesea.org. But other than that, I'm at steveeverettmusic.com. Or if you're old school, steveeverett.net. And you can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, everywhere. Just Google Steve Everett and click on something, and I'll see you there.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming and talking to us for a bit and let us pick your brain. I'm sure all of our listeners are going to love to hear your voice, hear a little bit about you, and hear your music if they haven't already been introduced to it. So thanks again. I hope you enjoy the rest of this coronavirus vacation type deal, and looking forward to getting you on the road here real soon.
I love it. Thank you guys so much.